Hi, I want to talk to you today about how to make sauerkraut and why lacto fermented foods are so important. If you're new here, I'm Rita Johnson, owner of Divine Mercy Nutritional Care, and I help women address their root cause issues and reproductive health problems that they're having through food, nutrition, and lifestyle changes. So sauerkraut and lacto fermented foods in general are such an amazing powerhouse of nutrients. They actually are full of microbes that are really good for our overall gut health. So anytime we have a dysbiosis, so a disproportionate amount of good bugs to bad bugs, you can think of it as, or if something gets off and out of whack, we can have a whole host of other issues develop, whether that's a yeast overgrowth, whether that's issues with our reproductive health, you name it. There's very little that can't be impacted by a poor microbiome. So that, coupled with the fact that cruciferous vegetables, which cabbage is a member of that vegetable family, are really good for helping us to heal and seal the gut lining, is why I want to teach you today how to make sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is one of the easiest lacto fermented foods, and I think that it's incredibly versatile. You may not like sauerkraut, but I want to challenge you to give this a try, because oftentimes homemade sauerkraut tastes a lot different than sauerkraut that you would get in the store that's been pasteurized and processed to really extract a lot of the flavor out. So I started out with some shredded cabbage. This is just cabbage shredded in my bowl. I'm going to use Nourishing Traditions recipe for sauerkraut, which is very simple. It just calls for salt, caraway seeds, and then either additional salt or some whey that you can use to moisten the cabbage. The other thing we're going to use for the liquid component of our sauerkraut is we're actually going to pound all of the juices that are in this cabbage out into the bowl. Okay, so now that it's nice and pounded, we have the juices you can see from the cabbage leaves, but also it's compacted more, right? So we want that liquid so that the cabbage can actually sit in its own juices as it ferments. Before you start pounding the cabbage, it's important to add the salt, because the salt will really help to extract the liquids out of the cabbage leaves. So the recipe that I mentioned I'm using, I'll put in the notes, but my recipe calls for a tablespoon of caraway seeds as well. And I did use a pretty large head of cabbage to make this, so it won't be a super strong flavor for the caraway seeds. So just pound it a little bit more and get those caraway seeds mixed throughout. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is spoon this all into a glass jar. So it's important to have a glass jar. I like to use these little funnels to put it inside of it. And then we will have either a weight at the top or have all of the food immersed in the liquid. So we don't want any food being floating at the top, because then it is being exposed to air and it can actually have mold begin to grow in there, as opposed to the beneficial bacteria, which are growing in an anaerobic. Once we have it all into our jars, then I have these glass weights that I like to use to, like I said, keep the food below the water level. So originally, as we place them in there, the water level is not going to be high enough to really submerge that. But you'll see just after a few hours that the water will continue to be released from the cabbage leaves, and it will be immersed in that by the evening. So like I said, these are optional. You don't have to have them in there. It doesn't fit into my small jar, so I'm not going to put it in this one. I'll just keep an eye on it, and I'd like to think of it as it's more maintenance if you don't have something like a weighted lid at the top. So I'll be sure that I push them down below, all the cabbage leaves down below the liquid level. And then the other thing that we'll do is just put some type of airlock lid on them. So I have a pack of these airlock lids that just fit nicely inside of a mason jar, and it just releases pressure through this middle part if there is pressure bubbling up in the jar, so that my jars don't explode. But you can also, do this with very little additional purchases. My smaller jar, I'm just gonna use a regular lid and I'll burp it. So what that means is every day, I'll just check on it. I'm gonna be pressing down the cabbage leaves below the water level anyway. I'll take the lid off and just make sure there's no pressure collecting in there to release that pressure. So as these sit on our counter, anywhere from 72 hours to several weeks, depending on how warm your kitchen is and how you like your sauerkraut to taste. The longer that it ferments, the more of a tangy, zippy flavor you're going to have to it. Usually we make sauerkraut when we're almost out of sauerkraut, and we're really excited to get it back into our kitchen. So we oftentimes just let ours ferment for like 3 days, and it still tastes really good. So some things that we like to do with our sauerkraut is we love to put them on fried eggs in the morning. We put them on sandwiches. Obviously, if we're having something like a hot dog, brats, burgers, we put sauerkraut on that. But I really encourage you to be adventurous with it. This is so good for your health of your microbiome. Even just a tablespoon a day is going to really impact everything about your overall health and prevent you from needing to use probiotics on a daily basis, unless we're really dealing with some big term replenishing of what's been going on in your gut. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more content from me, and thank you so much for watching.